Public Report, a public affairs presentation of KTBW. The opinions expressed in this program does not necessarily reflect the views of the Trinity Broadcasting Network.
Good morning and welcome to Public Report. I am your host, Latasha Raines. For some of us, the term education can be a very broad term. Does this mean a four-year degree, learning a trade, or simply life experience? Today, we are going to discuss some issues within a specific type of education, which is achieved through technical college. Although I personally value education, I'm not the expert, but today's guest is. Please welcome the president of Clover Park Technical College, Dr. John Wallstrom. Welcome, Dr. Wallstrom.
Thanks very much, Latasha. Glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. So why don't you tell us, what does the president of a technical college do?
Well, I have a couple primary responsibilities. Number one, I have an external responsibility. I'm kind of the standard bearer, the flag waver for the institution, and try to make sure that we know what is going on external to the college. And I present to the public what we do. The internal job is making sure the operations, the mission of the institution of educating people goes on, and I have a great team that helps me do that.
Excellent. So I want to just kind of dive into what we're here to talk about today, where the first, problem of higher education changes. I mean, there's been a lot of evolving within higher education over the years, as I'm sure that you've seen. So can you please describe the difference between higher education today as opposed to maybe 15 or 20 years ago?
It's a good question because we are still engaged in what I guess a lot of people are referring to as the Great Recession. We've in Washington, but I think there's clearly a national phenomenon going on here, that most of our institutions are suffering from fewer dollars and a lot of unemployed people and the need to train more people. So getting an educated workforce out of an institution that has historically had more support has been a challenge. I think we've risen to the occasion as a sector of education, and they are the two your colleges, community and technical colleges.
So talking more about technical colleges, how are they, as you would say, rising to the occasion to meet the challenge of all these unemployed workers that are out there today, some of which haven't been in the educational environment for years?
I guess the first thing I'd say is most of the colleges, the technical colleges for sure, but I think community colleges as well, pride ourselves in saying our job is to prepare a workforce. Now, community colleges do more than that. They'll transfer people on to get their baccalaureate degrees as well. But they have a rich history as well of making sure that we prepare people to work. I tell people, when they ask what does Clover Park Technical College stand for, I say our job is to prepare an educated workforce. Right now, as opposed to, say, 10 years ago, the number of students, the kind of students are very different. The number of students has grown remarkably as there have been so many people out of work, so many people needing a job, so many people needing new skills to get where they need to be. Years ago, I'd say 10, 20 years ago, it was fair to say that the students we saw may very well have been recent high school graduates, 19 years old, right out of high school, knew they wanted to go to work right away but needed some basic skills training. Today, while those students still come to us, there's a larger group of people, I'd say working adults who need new skills, unemployed individuals, or people that are re-careering, people 50 years old who realize they cannot afford to retire, but yet they're out of work. So that large spectrum of students we have has dramatically changed the way we do business, trying to serve the needs of all of those people.
Wow. So when you talk about how the student has changed, what specific, I know you touched on the demographics, but what are the specific programs? I mean, how have you guys actually changed to accommodate the different demographics versus the ones that were there 10 or 20 years ago?
One of the important things we do and must do is to make sure that we are in touch with our community, the business community in particular. If our community has a need for automotive technicians, we've got the responsibility of moving our resources to make sure that need is met. If we no longer need flower arrangers for the local Safeway at Albertsons, maybe that's not a program we should be running anymore. So downsizing that program or discontinuing in favor of building, say, the aerospace industry to support Boeing and its suppliers is a responsibility that we take on. So we have to stay in constant touch with the business world to make sure that we're serving them as well as the students who want those jobs.
So if a student comes to you and let's say they want expertise in a certain field that you guys do not consider maybe catering to those new businesses that you were just talking about, do you redirect them to a community college? I mean, how do you resolve that type of a challenge?
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head that the best way to deliver this in a only small geographic area, if you have multiple colleges, to make sure you don't duplicate everything. There is value of duplicating programs. Right now, we could probably find nursing in almost every two-year program in the country, two-year college. And the reason is because there's a shortage of nurses. That may be diminishing a bit, but nonetheless, that's an example of why we would have multiple programs. But there may very well be an occasion where I'd refer a student who's made a request to go to a local college that offers a program and vice versa. We try to work together in that regard.
Excellent. So I guess I'm not seeing like a clear distinction between a community college and a technical college. If there's, someone that's coming out of high school, how do they decide, okay, what would be a deciding factor, I guess, and how would they choose what would be a better fit for what their future goals are?
Talk about the history just for a minute. Years ago, they were called junior colleges. And a junior college was a place where a person who had the wherewithal, had the skills to go to a university, perhaps couldn't afford to go to the university, needed to live at home, maybe even go part-time, but that's what they wanted to do. The junior colleges really did emerge during the 30s and 40s, certainly before then as well, to make sure that we kept the cost of an education lower by keeping them home for a couple of years and getting that first 2 years. After the Second World War, a whole new need emerged for the need for technician-level workers. And these were folks that come to the local college, not necessarily with the idea of transferring to university, but yet getting a fundamental education as well while still living at home or still working. The community colleges have really embraced both of those missions. The technical colleges pretty much have stayed in the workforce development mission. There is a third mission that's emerged that both of us embrace very strongly, and that is the number of people that are coming to us that are woefully unprepared to go to college. They didn't have a good high school experience 20 years ago, but now they know they need it, or somebody that graduated from high school but yet is still not quite ready to take those courses. So those three missions that the community college has, I would say that the technical colleges are more the workforce and basic skills development.
Okay, so again, looking at the problem of unemployment and people that are trying to get back into the workforce, what would you say are the majors that are in high demand and why?
Our college, I don't think, is different than many of them throughout the country, particularly in Washington, where we've tried to cluster some of our programs. The health sciences, allied health, or support or technician-level programs in the health field are a very strong area. As a matter of fact, we're building a new building on our campus, and I know some of the sister colleges in the region are doing the same thing to support the need to turn out a workforce that's going to take care of people like me in a relatively short period of time. We have an aging population. They're going to need some help, and we need a strong workforce to take care of that. One of the important things about that program, and you and I talked about this a little bit earlier, it's a transportable skill. I mean, if your family, the rest of your family moves to Nevada, you can move to Nevada, and if you're going to be a clinical technician or a surgical technician or a licensed practical nurse, pretty easily transferable. There's licensing issues, but that's easily done. The second area is what I call high technology. It's an old term, really, but aerospace, the advances that are made in automotive, other transportation fields are really big. In Washington State, particularly for about 15 colleges of the 34 in Washington, aerospace, support of Boeing and its many suppliers has been a major program. The third area, of course, that I point out is the computer, the evolution of the use of the computer in business and investment and finance. So a support system for that is a very popular one as well.
Wow. Okay. So you guys definitely have programs, I'm assuming, that actually address those things because, again, with unemployment being so high and that being a huge challenge in our community, I would like to know how the technical colleges are actually addressing and meeting those challenges and finding solutions to those challenges.
One of the important things that happens when a person comes in, if they want to pursue a particular field, we've got a responsibility to try to gauge them to determine that they're really ready to move into one of these fields or the other. So we'll do that with some kind of assessment up front or some kind of interest inventory where we can determine where they're not only their interest but also the skills are. Additionally, I think we've got to have some sense, they've got to have some sense by looking at the the programs, looking at the laboratories to make sure that it looks like a good fit for them, that's something they really want to pursue. So that's another dimension of it. And I think the third thing is to try to challenge them is to find out what they really want to do. I view it, what we do, is not just helping people get a job. It's important to do that. But I think helping to educate them for a career is the next step. I think that to assume that you're going to move into a job that's going to be that same job for the rest of your life, those days are long gone. But the reality is getting them into a job with a career in mind, a career that perhaps will expand not just vertically but horizontally as well, is important.
So what, in your opinion, is an opportunity available for those who may have been in the workforce for years and now they find themselves being laid off for a younger, more savvy generation, but they're not ready to retire? They can't retire. What are the solutions that a technical college would offer for someone in that position?
There's a national initiative out of the American Association of Community Colleges. It's called the Plus 50 program. And it absolutely pays attention to the skills, the challenges, and the needs of people 50 years and older who still know they have a great deal to give to our society, and the fact that they can find some work that'll suit them. Making sure that they understand the needs that are probably more specific to those folks. Healthcare, insurance, knowing what kind of support systems they can rely on that they may not have had to rely on when they were 19 years old is part of what they have to pay attention to. And then I think looking at those things that are no different than what the 19-year-old would look for. What program do I want? Do I have the skills? Do I have the capabilities? Is it offering me a future? So we are looking at both ends of that spectrum and all those folks in between and trying to pay attention to their individual kinds of needs.
Is there anything, now we've talked about several different things, mainly focusing on those who are seeking employment, but is there anything that you would like to leave with the viewers as we kind of come to the end of this segment as far as what you've said?
I think for over 105 or 6 years, the two-year colleges of the United States have focused very specifically on getting people in a community to be educated. The world has changed dramatically, and as a result, the 1,202-year colleges across the country are pretty much within reach of every American. When you can't reach them face-to-face or geographically, now we can do it electronically. There's a whole new world, a whole new future emerging, and the two-year colleges are going to be part of that process.
And quickly, are there any resources or websites that we can look for that would possibly, I mean, of course, the Clover Park Technical College website, but any general resources? Every
college has its own website, and they probably have sites that you can go to from them with reference to very important issues like financial aid, important issue, child care services, the kinds of support systems as you need to make sure that you can continue. Insurance is something that young people take for granted at times, but the reality is folks who have a little more experience have to pay attention to that. All of that information is available through any number of websites. I'm not sure I can identify specifically, but if a student is looking for how do I go about financing college, they can do that.
Well, thank you so much for this first segment. I'm excited for the next segment where we'll be talking a little bit more about the financial side of things in higher education. But again, thank you so much for being here, and we'll look forward to that next segment.
Okay, Latasha, thanks so much.
Some more.
What's he doing?
But he can't.
Look at him. It's just not done.
Please, sir, I want some more.
More? More?
More? Please, sir.
He has asked for!
Thank you.
What?
Well, he did say please.
Sir?
Yes, he did. And thank you.
Yeah, and thank you.
He's a wonderful boy. I do like the boy.
Please. And thank you. Pass it on.
Thank you.
welcome back, and we're in our second half of Public Report. I'm your host, Latasha Raines, and we are here with Clover Park Technical College President, Dr. John Wallstrom. In this half, we will be addressing the problem of decreased state funding and the solution to this problem, and also the effects that it's having on the students that are enrolling. Welcome back, Mr. Wallstrom.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Latasha.
So the first question I would like to ask you is, what are the kinds of fiscal challenges that the technical college are facing right now, and how have you dealt with these challenges?
I would say that Clover Park Technical College is no different than 95% of the colleges in the country, certainly over the past 4 or 5 years. So if I focus on Clover Park, you can extrapolate that to other colleges quite easily. We've experienced tremendous loss in revenue. The recession has kept people from working, not paying taxes to the degree that they used to, and we depend on that. It's a major part of what it costs to run the college. Tuition is the other major piece in Washington State in particular. We don't get a lot of local money like public schools. So as our funding from the state has dropped, that money's been made up by charging students more. It's created a tremendous challenge for some students, put an awful burden on them to pay the bills to get an education. Another important characteristic of the recession and the loss of money is the fact that so many people have been out of work. They're going back to school. They're going to private career schools, they're going to universities, they're going to community and technical colleges to get what they need to either, number one, find a new job or a new career, or find that second job or something they can make ends meet with during this very difficult time. And that has been a real challenge for the college. Fewer dollars to serve more people.
You spoke about how, although the bad economy and the loss of jobs actually driven people to the colleges, do you find that that is balancing out the loss, or is it just, is it still helping there with the finances?
It's not balancing out because most states, and Washington in particular, we're capped as to how many students we can get state money for. So this legislature, the taxpayer, tells the legislature, here's how many dollars I'll give to higher education. But if we keep enrolling students beyond that, we get no new money. We only depend on tuition at that point, which is really a fraction of what students need to pay, if you will, in total to pay the bills. So we're seeing that enrollment go up, but we've experienced quite a bit of loss of funding that's forced our hand on a couple areas. Number one, we've had to reduce the number of programs we offer. So programs that are not really working to support the economy have been considered or are already gone. Programs where perhaps we're offering multiple options, maybe a day section, a night section, a weekend section, we can't afford to do all those anymore, and that takes away the options from some folks. So that increase the number of students with fewer dollars has caused fewer programs and really has closed the door for some students to get a higher education at some of these colleges.
Do you feel that, or even based on your experience, that there's still going to be technical colleges, going forward in the future? I know right now there are 5 of the 2-year institutions in Washington State are technical colleges. Right. Will that number decrease? Do you see there being more of a merge? I think we talked about how in the past there was kind of the community technical college 2-in-1 there. Sure. Do you see us going back to that? What are your projections on that?
I think right now, the fact that we're so considerably over-enrolled, there's very little serious talk about getting rid of or merging the colleges. There's some conversation, make no mistake about it, but I think it's within the eyes of people who think, can we do it more efficiently with fewer colleges? But right now, I think the role of the technical college, getting people trained, getting people to work, getting people who are working retooled, if you will, that mission's sound. We're going to be here for a while in that regard. Once again, I think the community colleges do a great job, but they also have that transfer mission that we only do a little bit of.
With decreased funding, how do you plan to move forward? I know you mentioned kind of a few different things that you guys had in plan, but obviously long term, I mean, that could still affect things possibly negatively. I mean, if you're having to cut programs, it means you're probably cutting teachers, and that's kind of giving back into that unemployment numbers. So.
You're absolutely right. Every time I discontinue a program or colleges discontinue programs, make no mistake, there's a humane piece of each of us that says that means that a faculty member or two are going away with those programs. undeniable that happens. But I think the fact is each of us as institutions and the presidents and the staff of the institution are being challenged to find ways to do the job with fewer dollars. So in some cases, we have increased class sizes. So the same faculty members teaching more people. That has challenges because I think it does diminish the education when you have to spread them so thin like that. But we also have asked the people in the administrative ranks to serve more people with fewer dollars. So a counselor, advisor, a financial aid representative, people in the registration office are seeing more and more people with fewer workmates. But I think the fundamental things are making sure we don't waste utilities, we don't use as much paper as we used to use, and the kinds of things that are just a general cost savings that an average person would consider when they have fewer dollars is something every single one of us have had to do, and I think have done successfully.
Do you see, this turning for a positive? Do you see that numbers will start increasing as well as funding? Is that on the horizon?
I'm hopeful that that's going to happen. And I think there's another dimension of the change that I want to point out. We are all relying on technology to operate more efficiently. Number one, there are students that would be just as happy not driving 15 miles to come to our campus if they could take the same course on their computer in their kitchen, sitting there in their pajamas. The reality is there are people that would be just as happy, quite capable, and be just as successful learning at a distance. The other thing is we create time restraints when they come to campus. Class starts at 10, it ends at 11:15. You be there in that time period or else. But self-directed, self-paced, technology-driven, electronically based courses can be done when you want, and that should serve a large number of people. So I think our enrollment is going to stay up and actually shift more to what we call distance education or taking courses electronically.
I've personally participated in distance education programs, and it is definitely convenient to be sitting in my PJs and start class when I would like to start class. So that is an awesome option, but you can also be successful and still achieve the same end result. One
dimension of that is really important. Students who take those courses must be self-directed. They really are doing it themselves, and as a result, not every student is prepared to do that. They need a little direction, and I think to offer both, at least for now, to the public is a necessary way to do business.
So Clover Park is a part of a program called Achieving the Dream. Can you elaborate on what that is, and is that something that's across the board happening in other technical and community colleges? I'm not familiar with the program, so please share with us what that is.
The Achieving the Dream is an extraordinarily valuable and important program across the country. The Lumina Foundation put a tremendous amount of money. I think there are 160 of the 1,200 two-year colleges across the country contributing and taking advantage of this. President Obama several years ago put forth the American Graduation Initiative. He told the country, if you will, I don't know if it was the State of the Union address, but at some point along the way, we need another 5 million more graduates by the year 2025, give or take some of those years. But the fact of the matter is, he has challenged us. Every state has put forth a challenge to say we need people to get to the finish line. The number of people that come to us that take 3 courses, they go find some relatively low-level job just because they're hungry, may work at getting a job. But if they're really going to be successful in the future, they've got to go beyond and get more in education. The Achieving the Dream grant and support project is one that's going to urge us, challenge us as institutions to find ways to help students make it to that finish line, get to that tipping point where they really can find a family-sustaining wage in a job. And Achieving the Dream is asking us to look for strategies to find out to students, get to the finish line, or make sure that those that come in that are unprepared have a support system in place to get them to where they need to be.
So is it like a funding program, and what are the practical things that you have to do in order to qualify for that?
We do get money. There's a grant proposal that is submitted. You put together a proposal that basically says what resources can you bring to bear, what ideas can you bring to bear that the Lumina Foundation finds valuable. It's not a lot of money. It really does challenge the institution to take people that are working in jobs to understand you got to do your job, but at the same time, pay attention to this important role we have of getting people to complete successfully.
And why do you feel like student completion is so important? I think there might be some blaring examples, but really, why do you feel like that's important?
I think that in the long run, credentials matter. I think if we look over the course of the years or even lifetimes of individuals. Those people who have attained higher levels of formal education, higher levels of certification, if you will, whether it's a master's degree or a bachelor's degree or an associate degree, are going to do better financially. They're going to depend less on the public safety net that we create, and it's just a way to help them educate their people, educate their families, and as a result, people who get that higher level are going to be less of a challenge on our institutions. And we need that right now because so many people are very dependent on what we do, and our job is to try to get them to the credentials. Make no mistake, there are some folks that can take a couple courses and get a job and be perfectly happy. But I think as a nation in the long haul, we want to challenge our people to be more formally educated and credentialed. And it doesn't, when I say formal, maybe what I really mean is they don't have to all go to school. There are certain folks that can be independent learners and do very well. I want them to be successful too, but be able to call on us if they need us.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of people say, you know, you can't, unless you have this degree or that degree, you can't achieve a certain level of economic stability. But then we find that there are people that have high levels of education who are unemployed. What is, you know, someone in your position's response to that? And when you're talking with students about how important getting that higher education is?
First of all, I think it's really important. I use the term a family-sustaining income. If somebody takes a program of study for which they can get a job and it supports their family, they don't need a bachelor's degree to do that. There are many jobs. I think people who are registered nurses that graduate and they're compensated very fairly for their work and they can raise a family. My point is that if that person needs a bachelor's degree to move to the next step or a master's degree, we have to find ways to help them get there. But I don't think challenging everybody to do that is what has to be. There are some programs of study at the colleges that perhaps do not provide that family-sustaining income. It's my job, it's our challenge to make sure that we don't waste the taxpayers' money on those programs if students are not going to be gainfully employed or happy in their future after graduation.
Can you summarize for me just what the role, you feel the role really is of technical college in, especially in the lives of the community out there, people that have been affected by unemployment, including myself and others. What do you see, just quickly, what that role is?
Our role is to try to keep our finger on the pulse of what is going on in the community to serve the community's workforce needs. 2, we have to be looking farther down the road to find out what it is that people are going to be looking for in the future, making sure that we talk to people like Boeing and Microsoft and Apple to say, what kind of workers will you need in the future, not just today, and to make sure that our programs are flexible enough to transition to it. 3, I think
Dr. Wallstrom, you know what, we're actually coming to an end here, but no, this has been a wealth of information, and I'm really appreciative of you being here today. I want to thank everyone for joining us on Public Report. We have the president of Clover Park Technical College here, and we'll see you next time on Public Report.
You've been watching Public Report, a public affairs presentation of KTBW. The opinions expressed in this program does not necessarily reflect the views of the Trinity Broadcasting Network.